Okay, I think we are live.
Hello.
And as you can see, I'm not at home. We are actually in the same room. I used the chance to drive down to Basti and welcome you from here. That's why Basti and I are on this table, looking into the camera and doing this together today. I hope everybody understands us fine. The audio quality should be okay. And if not, please let us know. Also, in case there are any issues, because it's not the usual setup I usually run, sorry. It's like, if you would see what's behind right here, all this, you would understand. I just drove down to this morning and set everything up, 2 cameras and lights and cabled everything, audio stuff. Yeah, and I'm really happy that Bastian was asking if we do another release show, because the last one was quite fun. It actually is nearly a year ago, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
December
15th or something like that, yeah.
And it was great fun. And we thought, like, why not do this again? And I thought, like, as I loved shaking things up, why not drive down to Basti and do it from here? As usual, if you have questions during Basti's demo, what he's going to show later, please drop all the questions in the section that is called questions, actually on the left-hand side in the sidebar. We will pick up those questions and get to them later. And yeah, Basti, what a ride during the last year. I mean, 3.5, 3.6, a lot of iterations in between.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe let me take the chance first and say thank you to you, because I mean, not everyone in Vito right now probably has joined the last show, and maybe not all of them know you. And so to give you a quick introduction, this is Mark, a very good friend of mine. We know each other since, I guess, 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, something like this.
Something like this, yeah.
He's running a wonderful conference in Germany since that time. So this is how we got to know each other, which is called Beyond Tellerrand. And during those weird times, the COVID times, he started this digital site version of it called Stay Curious. And he has this magic setup stuff over here. I mean, I posted
magic.
Black magic. I posted a picture on Discord, so you can see our view right now. And I mean, it's great. The 3.5 release event was really great because he can do all this. It's working pretty flawlessly most of the times. Oh God, now I probably jinxed it. Yeah, and I'm just really, really happy that he does that for us, and he's helping me out with this little release show and asking the questions, the stupid questions or the good questions. Let's see. I don't know. Let's see how it goes.
So my actual task is, while Basti is demoing stuff,
you can
I drink beer and prepare myself to ask stupid questions, or just read out your stupid questions. No, honestly, there's no thing such like stupid questions. Drop your questions. We're totally happy to.
We should also thank Toby.
Yes, absolutely.
Mark asked Toby again, and he's also like a really essential part of Mark's conferences for years now, also right from the beginning, right?
No, 2013.
So normally what he does is he's sampling the talks, and then during the breaks, he's mixing those samples into great songs and playing them during the show, and it's really, really cool. And so I'm also very happy that he was able to make it, and he's also giving us another round of music a bit later,
in the break, exactly. We tried to also fix the little bugs that we had with the connection somehow, because really just a second before we went live, Toby was kicked out of our connection right here because he's remote. And when he joined in again, we had this little like sound problems and also a little bit of delay sometimes in his sound. But we're gonna fix that hopefully when Bastian is giving the demo. Talking about it, should we just start? Because it's
let's
10
go.
past 8 already.
Yeah, let's get started.
Good.
So now one of the magic buttons has to share my screen and make me.
There you go. Your screen and you.
Yeah, this is it. So we released 3.6 last week, as some of you might have noticed. And as Mark already said, it has been a long time since we started working on this. So 3.5 launched in December last year, December 15th, I think. And then we took a pretty long break to work on a website, and we released a new website in April, and then we started working on this release. So this release is more than 7 months old, and we put a lot of work into it. And what I want to show you today is an overview of all the features, not all the features, of the big ones, and also some of the big updates. You can find all that I'm going to show you today also on our release page that we have on our website. Maybe someone can post a link there if you haven't seen it yet. And I just want to take you through the features that I think are most interesting in terms of your editors, of your clients, but also for you as developers. Yeah, just to give you an idea what you can do, how you can use them for yourself. And let's just get started. So the first one, the big one that has been requested for a long time is copy and paste for blocks. So we introduced the new blocks editor in, well, it's not new anymore. We introduced it in 3.5, so last year. And the blocks editor has been a really big step. So it's this, what you see is what you get editor, but in our opinion, a lot more capable because content is organized in blocks and you can work really, really detailed with those blocks in terms of the design, but also in terms of the structure. And your editors can still have a really nice editing experience. So that was a big step for us. And one major thing that has been missing for all those months has been the option to just copy and paste content into those block fields and create blocks by that. So this is what we have been working on in the last months, and which has been quite challenging in terms of how we get the HTML from the clipboard and convert it to something that is then structured and not just a mess of HTML that you would find on a website. So let me give you a quick first demo of it. Since we are already sitting here, I'm always taking Mark's wrap-up blog posts for his last event, in this case, as a demo because they are so big and they are also quite well structured. So this would be a good example for what you can do now with a new copy and paste feature for blogs. So in case you want to copy something from the web, you can now do this and you can go back to your panel and then you can paste it. And as you can see, it took a while because this article is pretty long, but then afterwards you get all those nice blocks and they are really, really well structured. So they are not just a bunch of HTML, they are organized in the blocks that you might have already seen from the blocks editor. So you have a heading block, you have text blocks, you have image blocks, you can see the captions below, and all of this is now editable and all of this is now configurable. So you can now start editing that and crop that and work on it. And you can see it imports the image URL, it imports the alternative text, it imports the captions. It tries to be as smart as possible about the content that you give it from your clipboard and tries to make the best out of it. Of course, this has been an ideal situation. The HTML for the articles that Mark writes is quite clean. And so the output is also quite clean. Not all articles that you would copy from the web would always get those kind of high quality results. It really depends on the underlying HTML. If the HTML is completely crap, yeah, we will probably end up with a text field most of the times. It depends on what you get. But what we can promise is you will never end up with the typical things that you would normally fear from such copy and paste features in what you see is what you get editors. You won't get any styles or any elements, any HTML elements that you don't want to have in there. So it only pastes stuff that you want in there. So if you don't allow a heading block, it won't appear. If you don't allow bold text in your paragraphs, it won't give you bold elements or strong elements in your paragraphs. So that's super important for us. It also even gets videos right if they come from YouTube or Vimeo, so that's also a big feature. So you can get pretty decent results out of the box. And then of course you still have the option to drag stuff around, work with the regular features that you have, add new blocks below, whatever you would do in the block field afterwards. So that's one thing you can do with it. And I just give you another example from a different page. So just to show you that's not just optimized for Mark's site, it's also optimized for our own site. Well, I'm kidding. It should be working fine with most stuff that is good structured, as I said. So here's just another demo from Sonja's latest article. It imports also code blocks, as you can see. It should import quotes. Yeah, and it cleans up the HTML. So this is kind of what happens in the background. It's not just pasting, it's sending the clipboard to the server, and the server will then pass the HTML, remove all the crap out of that, remove all styles and different kinds of things that you don't want in there, and then try to make the best blocks out of it. And this is not just working for HTML, for websites. This is also working for Word documents. So this is a demo a Word document. Same here. When your Word document is well structured and your users of Word use the proper formatting styles here, then you also get quite decent output here. So this would be the result from a Word document. As you can see, it looks quite well. And it removes all the stuff that you don't want to have in there. So it doesn't have the yellow background, it doesn't have the red background, it doesn't give you any of the colors or anything else from the format itself. It's really just converting that to structured HTML, to structured data in those blocks. So when I open that up in my content folder, you can see this is the JSON that I get out from the Word document. And what this means is you get the same control over the content that you would normally get from native blocks when you start adding blocks to the block field, and you can control it in your templates, you can create custom snippets for all your blocks, you can style them appropriately, and you can do that without any mess in here. And one other big important feature is you can now copy blocks also between fields. So I can go in, copy a block, and then go to a different page and paste the block there. So if I have multiple block fields on multiple pages, I can copy blocks between those different block fields. And this also works for layout fields, which is quite important. So if you have complex layouts and you're using the new layout field, you can paste blocks in there as well. You can copy blocks from there and put them into a simple blocks field, and they are compatible each way. So that's a big step for the blocks field. Probably one of the biggest steps in terms of usability for your users. We are working on new features to bring even more features to the blocks field, but we are one really major step ahead with this new feature here. So this is copy and paste for blocks. The next one would be the new image options. So you know all those lists and the card layouts from the panel already, and you know that you might know, I don't know how many new Kirby users are in here. So for everything that we are adding to the panel, we can control how the images are, or the previews are rendered for those pages. So I can control those little rockets here. This is something that I added in my blueprints. And what we can do now in 3.6 is we can really fine-tune the way that the previews look for such lists, for our cards, for pretty much anything that you add for pages, for files. And those image options, they are really, really cool. And I want to demo why they are so cool. So what I did for this demo is I imported our cookbook articles from our website. So those are tutorials on the website, how to get started with Kirby, how to get more advanced. And they are categorized into different categories, as you probably have seen. So we have articles about security, articles about templating, about the panel, about content, all kinds of categories. And I try to just toss them into one big list and see if I can make the best out of it with the new image options. So let me show you how I did this. So far, how the image options worked is if you have such a pages section like I have here, this list of articles, I can then control how the images are rendered. So I can say, okay, I control the image option and I say, where do my images come from? That could be just a simple first image from a page if it exists. If it doesn't exist, it doesn't show anything. And then I can say, okay, what is the ratio of the image? What is the background color of the image? What is the icon? etc. So I have all those options to control that. And I do that on a section basis. And this is working really well, and this is still continuing to work in 3.6. But for this new image options, what we wanted to do is to give more control per page type. So for example, in this case, we wanted to make it possible that you can define those image options for a page in the blueprint of the page and not in the section definition. So right now, the easier way to do this is with the new image options in the cookbook recipe blueprint. So this is the recipe, or this is the blueprint, the setup for each of those articles that you see in the list. And we can say, okay, every article in that list has those image options. And then wherever they turn up, in whatever section they turn up, those image options apply then. And as you can already see, those image options now get our new query syntax, or it's not new, our query syntax. So we can now make them dynamic. Of course, they can still totally be static. So I could say, I just define an icon that has been shown. So now all the articles should show the same icon. So now they all get the same edit icon. And by using a query, I can say, no, I don't want the same icon for every article. I want a custom icon for every type of article. And that could be coming from a field. So I could say the icon is defined in a select field, for example, or that can come from a logical method in a model, in a page model. And this is what I did here. So I defined the category icon method in a page model, and it returns a different icon for different categories. I switched off the images for this, so it's not querying any images, it's just showing the icon. And then I have two more options to control the icon. So I can say which color should the icon have. It can be simple CSS keyword, just like black or red. Or it can be a hex code. So, well, that would also be red. But now you can really customize the colors for this. It could also be another query. So you could also query the color and say you have a color picker field for each cookbook recipe, and then you can define the icon color with this icon picker if that makes any sense. In our case, it's fine if we just use black. It also takes our custom color variables from the panel. So we have a bunch of colors that are available. So if I want to have green, for example, with a certain tint, I could make the icons green, which looks terrible in this case, but just for the demo. And you can look at our CSS custom variables that we have defined in our reference if you want to know more about those colors. And the same goes for the background. So I can also control the background. I could make it white. I could make it black and make the icon white. And again, I can make this dynamic. And this could also, again, be from a field, from a color picker field, or it could come from a model, or anything else that makes sense. So as you can see, it gives a lot of options to adjust those previews and make them really useful. And this is, well, in the end, it's all about the usefulness to your users, because it will make it easier to recognize the different categories. In this case, for the articles, it could also be for, we said before with Mark, different types of posts. When you create a blog and you have video posts and you have link posts and stuff like that, so you could set different icons for those based on the template, for example. So all of this becomes possible. Just to demo how this works. So in this case, we have a select field, and the select field has the different categories that we have available in the cookbook. So if I change this to internationalization, for example, the icon changes and the background color also changes. And for those who are more interested into the code behind it, it's all done in a model in this case. As I said before, you could also really just store those values in a field. It doesn't have to be a model. A model is always a bit more code and a bit more, it's not that user-friendly, beginner-friendly, I'm sorry. But for those who are familiar with models, you get the full flexibility with such a model. And in this case, I'm defining the categories here. And then based on those categories, I have different settings for the label, for the preview icon, and for the preview color. And I'm returning those in different methods, and I'm querying those in the cookbook recipe. And this is basically how it works. So lots and lots of options. This could also be an issue tracker. You could think of a similar label system like you would use on GitHub, for example, where you have different colors and different icons per different labels and issues that you're creating or something like that. Super useful. And it also can look really, really decent. So those are the image options. Of course, you still have the same old image options that you know from the previous versions. We can still display images here instead. We can control the ratio. We can control if the images are cropped or not. All of this is, of course, still possible. Next one would be the writer. So the writer, I've been talking about the blocks field before, and the blocks field is this new approach that is making the rounds on the web in multiple application services. You could think about it from Notion or Gutenberg in WordPress. So this idea to separate content into structured blocks, which helps a lot to solve the typical issues that what you see is what you get editors bring. And this has always been the go-to solution for us as well when it comes to more complex pages, to longer articles with lots of detailed content and images and all kinds of media intermixed. But for simple text blocks, if you don't want to use our basic text area with the basic markdown formats and your editors don't feel comfortable about them, we still have a tiny what you see is what you get editor. It's not TinyMC, it's just, I just made that up. It's our own what you see is what you get editor based on Prose Mirror. And so far what it did, it only had inline elements. So you could define bold text and italic and underlined. And this is also used in our blocks field again, in those different types of blocks, in headline blocks and in paragraph blocks. But you can also use this as a standalone field, as I said, as a replacement for the text area. And now it also comes with more block types. Well, that's a bit confusing with something like a heading type or paragraphs. So now you can switch between those block elements, not inline elements in this case. And you can define different, well, that was stupid. You can define different elements and switch between those. And you can also define what block elements are available in a writer. So in case of this plain writer field over here, it's just a writer, but every format is disabled. So it doesn't bring any inline elements. It also doesn't bring any block elements. It's just really plain text. And this can be fine-tuned again. So when you go into our blueprint file, you can see this is the full writer. When you just define it, it comes with all the block elements, it comes with all the inline elements. And this second plain writer implementation switches off all the marks, and it also switches off all the nodes. This is how it's called in Prose Mirror. So marks would be the inline elements and nodes would be the block elements. And now we can start switching them on again based on what should be allowed. So for example, if we want to support bold text, we would add that to the marks and reload the page. And now we have bold as our option. And now we could say, okay, now also allow heading as a block element. It's not headings, it's heading. So now I can switch between the different heading elements here as well. And I can switch between bold text and regular text. So I have full control over what do I allow within this what you see is what you get field. It's not a full field. If you want images and videos, etc. again, then you have to go back to the blocks field and work with that. So we think that with some basic block elements, this is the perfect intermediate solution between those two fields. So it's more visual and more intuitive than a simple text area in many cases, but it's also not as overwhelming or as fully complex as a blocks field. So for example, if you really just have a bit of a paragraph where you need some basic styling in there, a blocks field would probably be too much. But if you have a long article, then the writer field would be not enough. So this is kind of where you have to balance the type of content that you're working with. One other little addition is a new email dialog. So if your editors want to add email addresses, they can now do this with a custom dialog or with a separate dialog. It's no longer needed to remember the mail to syntax for the link dialog. They can now just enter it here and it will add a proper email link to it. Those are the news about the writer formats. One other big thing in terms of customization for the panel for your editors is our new cardlets layout. So let me switch to that blueprint again to show you. You all have seen the lists and you probably all have seen our cards layout. So those are the two layouts that we supported so far. So you have a kind of a A/B switch between lists or table style content, very text intensive, and a very visual grid of content with big images. Those cards can be varied in size, so you can make them bigger and you can make them smaller, but it's kind of it. So you either go for fully visual or you go for lists. And with the new cardlets layout, you get a new intermediate step between those two versions. So you get something that is a bit more dense in terms of the information that you can see at once, but it's also still very visual at the same time. So it's perfect for something like this, a list of cards for users, authors, team members, anything else that would work give you this kind of ID card style, but also maybe articles that have images, but not maybe those high quality images that you want to show on a really big screen or in a really big grid. Something, maybe a product catalog. The products, the visuals are important, but not as important as, let's say, in a photography gallery or something like that. So that's kind of a new way to show your content. And it's fully responsive, of course. You can't adjust the size with the cardlets. The cardlets come in that format and that's it. So that's the difference between the cards. If you need more adjustments in terms of the size, you can either go for a custom CSS style in your custom panel CSS, or you can switch to the cards again. So those are cardlets, and I think they are really great because in many layouts, they also help to simplify the layout or to clean up the layout. And then there's a feature that is not really for the panel anymore. It's about templating and about improving the performance of your websites. Always a really big topic in terms of conversion. I'm sorry. So it's a big deal to make your sites faster, to make your company and your products more successful. And that's where images play a major role. So making images load as quickly as possible and take as little size network requests and size as possible is a really big deal because they play such a major role on a website in terms of the payload that you send over to your users. And with 3.6, we bring support for Webp and also AVIF. I hope it's pronounced like that. I have no idea, to be honest. And what this is, those are two new formats that are much better in terms of the file size than what you would get out of a JPEG or a PNG. Webp is already a lot smaller than JPEG. It depends on the image content, so how well the codec can compress the image. But it could get smaller file sizes from up to 50%. And then AVIF is even better than that. Also, again, depending on the image content, but it's really, really impressive. I have to say, both formats are well supported already in browsers. They are not supported in all browsers. You can check that out. Webp is pretty available across the board. And AVIF the support for AVIF is also getting a lot stronger. But it's really easy to create fallbacks for older browsers. So you can use that right now without any issues. Since those formats are pretty new still, not all not all server setups support them out of the box. So for example, the GD library does not bring that support out of the box. I think I read that it's planned for PHP 8.1, so GD library will also bring full support for WebP and AVIF from, well, I hope I got it right, at least for AVIF. I think WebP is already in GD library right now, but AVIF will be supported from PHP 8.1 on. ImageMagick has support for WebP and AVIF. Strangely, I didn't get AVIF running on my local machine, but I know that the more recent ImageMagick versions have it. So you have to switch your thumb driver to ImageMagick, and then you can make use of those formats. And the syntax for it is pretty simple. So if you want to make use of those formats right now, and you also still want to support older browsers, this is how you do it. So this would be a picture element, and in this case, we are just getting the first image of a page. You could also pass a file name here, as you would normally do with images, or you loop through images for a gallery, and then you create such a picture element. And the picture element is great because you can give the browser multiple options what to use. So in this case, the suggestion is basically take AVIF if you can. If you can't, take WebP. And if you still can't do that, if you're a really old browser, then at least take the image, the old good JPEG image, and render that instead. So it's quite nice. It's easy to understand if you read it. It's quite easy to build, so it's not a lot of effort. In this case, I just outsource it into a snippet, so I don't have to write the same code over and over again. And yeah, you can customize it quite nicely. And for us, for how you do it in Kirby is you fetch an image and then you call the thumb method and you pass the format to the thumb method. So this is important. You can't use it in the resize or in the crop method out of the box. You have to use the thumb method. But in case you want to crop or you want to resize, of course, you can also do that. So for example, I could say resize it to 800 pixels and then format it to, or convert the format to AVIF. And the same for WebP, etc. So I would just copy that to the others as well. And cropping in here is also possible. You can set the quality. Just read up for the reference about the thumb method to learn about all the different options that you can set. But basically, this is how you convert your images to different formats. We get asked quite a lot why we don't just bring a magic image method that does all of this out of the box. And we have discussed this in Discord a lot, in the forum a lot, in the team a lot. We feel like with something like the picture element is so flexible and so powerful, and you have different options like giving different sources based on the screen size. So with source set, you could give a cropped image for mobile versions and a resized image for larger versions. So the use cases are super different for every project. And we don't feel like there is a one-fits-all solution that we could just throw out there and give you. So it feels a lot better to give you an idea how you can use it, and then you build the perfect solution for your sites. Some sites, it's overkill to work this way. For some sites, it makes a lot of sense. So there's a balance between how much effort you want to put into the way that you render images. But if you care about performance, this is definitely the way to go. And I created a little comparison for you to give you an idea. I have to say that ImageMagick is not always perfect when it comes to creating the smallest possible JPEGs that you can get. So the original JPEG isn't much bigger than the quality at 90%. So this could probably be optimized. But you can still see how big the difference between JPEG and WebP already is. As I said, I wanted to get this running for AVIF as well for this demo today, but for some reason my ImageMagick is just acting up. But the comparison would be JPEG biggest, WebP smaller, AVIF even smaller. So that's kind of give you an idea. And you can see this at quality 50. And what I found really interesting is it's not just about giving you a smaller file size, it's also about giving you a better quality at a lower quality setting. So in this case of 50%, I don't know if this comes across on the stream, but the JPEG artifacts in this case on the left are already quite noticeable at this quality setting, and the Webp version is a lot better. So I don't see the same kind of artifacts there that I see on the left. So you can go at a lower level quality for the Webp images that you would normally do with the JPEG images, and you can still get a better result out of there. So it's really important to experiment with the quality settings as well in your format option, or in your thumb option, sorry. So that's something you can set. So if you go back here, you could then adjust the quality for all those images. So you could say, I go for 50 for AWIF, and I go for 50 for Webp, but for the JPEG, I stay at 70, for example, because afterwards the artifacts are too visible and I don't want to mess it up like this. So this is really important to keep in mind. And I think it gets even clearer here. So at a quality of 25, the sky is getting really messed up, and the Webp image is still holding up quite well. So let's just have a look at the image comparison. So this is resized at to 800 pixels in width, and we end up with 21 kilobytes compared to 129 kilobytes, and the image still looks pretty good. So I think that's awesome, a really awesome step forward in terms of performance and delivering images. Okay, next one. I hope you're still holding up here. Mark, you stop me whenever I should take a break, because we still have a second block and we can split stuff into a second block to not make it too long. But I think I'll take the next point and then maybe we'll take a break afterwards. So in Kirby 3.5, you had a settings menu item here. And many of us told us that the settings menu item is totally misleading, because you kind of expect that you could change the config there, or you could change different other settings in there. And that was never really the case. So when you clicked on that, you would mostly, in a single language installation, just see your license code and if it's a registered installation or not. And you would also see the version, the current version, and there are no settings, and it's also not possible. It has not been possible to extend this at some point. When you were in a multi-language installation, the languages would appear there. So this is kind of how we got into the naming for that view. So coming from that feedback, we said, okay, let's just split them. It makes a lot more sense to separate them into two different views. So now we have the system view and we have the languages view. The languages view only appears if you switch it on. So if you go to your config and you activate the languages option, that menu item will appear, and then you can start adding languages and turn your single language installation into a multi-language installation. And this is how it looks like. Otherwise, it will be gone from the menu, of course. So this is how it looks like. Now I can start adding languages, and I have basic language management. I can create a default language first and then add additional languages afterwards, and they will appear in the little drop-down when I want to translate content for pages or content for files, etc. And by splitting those two views, we have also come up with a new permission settings. So now you can say, okay, an editor cannot create new languages, cannot access the languages view. They can also not access the system view, but they can access the rest. And then you can have different kinds of roles for language editors or for system administrators that would still need access to those views. So this makes it a lot easier. And the system view is also a bit new. So this has been the block that you've seen before, and it's still there. It's still giving you the information that this is an unregistered demo. You can still register your installation here. You still get the version number here. But then we also started adding more information to this, and this system view will probably grow in the future. So we plan to make it a bit more of a basic information hub for everything around your installation. The health of your installation, the security of your installation, what kind of plugins are installed, is still everything up to date. Don't be afraid, we are not planning to build any auto-update feature in here. It's really just about showing you what's going on, warning you in terms of debugging is still on, this is not using SSL. More security features might come in here, basic checks that show you what you should or should not do, giving you recommendations. And it also already shows you a list of the plugins that you have. Version checks will come later, update checks will come later, so you get a better idea of how healthy is your installation. And I think this is really important. So those two new views, as I said, have permission settings, so you can easily switch off access to both of them. The system view is probably something you don't want to give access to everyone, depending on, well, how involved they are with the project after all. Another big step based on the feedback that we got from our feedback platform. And I have to say 3.6 is a lot about the feedback that we got from that platform, and the platform is working really well for us. I mean, it's working too well for us, to be honest, so there is just so much feedback that we could just keep on building and building and building. And in case of 3.6, you might have seen that, I mean, with a development phase of 7 months, we totally got carried away with too many ideas and too many things that we wanted to do. So yeah, those are the first few features that I wanted to show you. I think it's time for a little break, and then I'm going to continue afterwards with a bit more. So we have still a couple of points left, and especially the last one is going to be interesting. So if you have questions, keep in mind that you can post them on the left, not on the right, in the menu, and then I'll try to get back to them later. You will ask them for the audience, and then I will try to make some sense out of it.
Yes, and first of all, thank you for like staying focused on what you were doing, because I was like acting in the background to try to get Toby back to the live stream. But the problem really is we have got some issues with his computer or the connection. We don't really know, but the sound issues are too bloody annoying that we decided to now go on SoundCloud's account with where Toby's music is. I play something of that. We try to fix it still so that we get some Toby music later, maybe. But we didn't want to rush it, and it's a bit hectic in the background. Yeah. But that's live setup, right? So, and
it's the internet.
The internet and the bad connection here in Heidelberg.
Oh yes.
No, I don't think so. And also we still have a second blog. Mm-hmm. I already have my favorite feature of the first blog, I have to say. I love the cardlets, because I can directly see myself using them for the speakers in my events.
Fits well for you.
Yeah, totally love them.
Totally built it just for you.
Thank you. That's very nice. And I guess we take a short break of let's say 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's okay? 15 minutes for you?
Try to
stretch your legs, get some
questions.
new drinks. So see you at 9:05 again.
See you.
Hello.
What a cheesy wave. Hello.
The Muppets are back. I didn't find
Ernie and Bert.
I didn't find my Ernie shirt. Or are you Ernie and I'm Bert? I don't know. Who's the cone head? No idea. I would have loved to come back with striped shirts.
Oh yeah, we should have done that.
Sadly, no way.
Or a rubber duck.
Damn it. Next time. Well, we are here for round number 2 of the new features. Before we get to your questions, I've seen that there's already a couple of questions, and already a couple of questions have been answered by the lovely people of the Kirby team, but we will get to them anyways.
Yeah, team is doing a great job. I think I don't have much work left there. It seems. Yeah. Okay, still. But if you come up with something last minute questions, please send them over. Should I continue?
I'd say so.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
I have 2 more points on the list, and it seems like we are almost done. Yeah, I wish.
2 more points. Okay, here we go.
The next one is this home redirect, mysterious one. That would have fit better into the last block, but I think the last block got too long, so that's totally fine. What is meant with that? We heard many times that when you are in a situation where you work on your site with multiple people in an organization, or with different roles, different permission settings, and etc., it does not always make sense that you end up on the site view when you log in. So that's kind of the idea behind the home redirect, that we can now control where users end up when they log in. And it's a really powerful feature in fact. So you can say, okay, I'm an editor, I always work on the blog. There are multiple other pages, but I don't care about them. I just work on the blog, for example, or I only work on certain products or whatever. And then I can send that editor to that particular section where they want to get started, and they don't have to see all this. Or maybe they don't even are allowed to see all this. Maybe the dashboard is full of stuff that they can't access at all. So that's kind of the idea behind the home redirect. So this is how it works. You go to the blueprint for the user role. So different users can have different blueprints, or different user roles can have different blueprints. So you would create a blueprint for the admin role, and for the editor role, and for the client role, and whatever kind of roles you have, blog editor role, translator role. And those roles can then have a new home option in the blueprint. And that is, in its simplest form, is just a link. So you could say, let's send them back to the home page. And this wouldn't send them back to the panel, this would send them back to the home page. Or you could say, send them to the panel, or send them to Google, because they don't know what they are doing, they should just Google it first. So you're just passing relative absolute links in there. Well, mostly absolute links. So you could say, okay, go to the panel to your account view, because you can only access your account information, or go to the users view because you can only access the users administration, or go to the blog page, and then you would end up there. We don't have a blog page for the example. I take the cardlets, and let's just give it a try. So I log out, try to sign in again, and then I end up on the cardlets, and I can instantly start working on that. And I don't even have to go back and look at the dashboard. So this is really cool, because we have a lot of control already by passing links in there. But again, we can combine this with our query syntax to make it more powerful. So you could do simple things like site URL if you want to, well, that's the same like putting a slash in there, but you get it. I mean, you can now do all kinds of things. You could say, I find a certain page, maybe the blog, and I send them to the URL of that blog. Or I would say, I send them to the panel URL of that blog. Or you could do something like, I get the children of the blog and I send them to the first article of the blog, always the first article. And this is where it gets more dynamic, right? So you can create certain kind of rules. They always land on the latest article, or it could be based on a user setting. It could be based on pretty much anything that you make up. It could be based on a config option. If you do something like Kirby option my custom home, you could put that into your config file and use that as the redirect option. Anything is possible with the query syntax. I think it's a simple feature, but it's also a very powerful feature. It works really well in combination with permission settings. And it gives all kinds of freedom to send people anywhere. It even means that you could have a user role that doesn't have access to the panel, and you could still send them to the panel login. They authenticate there, and then you send them back to some front-end page. So maybe just a home page or an account page that you create on the website. And then you use our user authentication methods there to get the current logged in user, and you only use our panel login to log them in and handle the authentication that way. So it's a simple feature, but it can be really, really powerful. As I said, this would have fit better into the blog about the panel and about panel features and editor features, but that's it. I think it's good to have the break. So now the big last block, and it looks like a simple one, but it's kind of affecting everything. So some of you, or all of you who have followed us on Discord, you know about the new architecture that is behind all of this. So even if it looks like 3.5, it's not really the same thing. It is quite a new panel in the background. And that was an interesting decision. And we call this new architecture behind our panel Fiber. And in this last block, I want to get a bit more technical, talk a bit more about this architecture, what it means for you, what it means for plugin developers, what it means for the future of Kirby, because we believe it is really an essential step. This last release has taken, this new release has taken 7 months, and we didn't expect it to take that long. When we started, we had internally called it a quality release, so we wanted to make sure that it's all about unit tests and refactoring and getting rid of kind of nasty elements in our code that have been lying around as it is, like technical debt. And the more we worked on it, the more we realized that all the roadblocks that we saw, from issues that didn't get solved, from refactoring projects that weren't easy to do, everything just was kind of connected to the architecture behind our panel. When we moved from version 2 to version 3, we decided to go for a single page application, an SPA. So that's kind of the hot shit in the last few years. It's kind of debated nowadays. And it was kind of the right thing for us as well. So we decided to go for Vue.js, as you all know. And we decided to go for this new architecture where everything, well, most of the stuff is handled in JavaScript on the front end, and then only a few API requests get sent back to the server, and data is fetched from the server to load all kinds of pages and settings, etc. And this has been working really well for us. I don't want to talk too negatively about it. So it has been a successful story. It has given us a lot of freedom and a lot of possibilities, but it also made a lot of things more complex. So what this single page application brought to us as a team is that we went into the Vue.js world and into the component world. So we built components for all our interface elements. So we have the top bar and the sections and the different kinds of elements, buttons and drop downs, etc. And they are now all built into Vue components, and they are perfect because they help us to build little packages that we can use as a team reliably and that you can use as plugin developers reliably. And that is still an amazing thing. So we can bundle styles with them, we can bundle all kinds of interactivity with them. And I think it's still the way to go for us. But on the other hand, behind this single page application, what we had was a lot of logic on the front end. So the routing was happening in JavaScript. When you click on a link, all of that jumping to a next page and loading that kind of stuff was all done in JavaScript. And a lot of state management was done in JavaScript, and it's getting really technical here. There was a lot of JavaScript happening. And we didn't feel right about that part. So we felt right about the components, but it didn't feel right about all the other stuff. It got complex, and the more features we built, the more complex it got. And the outlook seemed the same. So whenever we thought about new features, about solving roadblocks and issues, it always felt like, oh shit, we have to throw more JavaScript onto it to solve it, to make it better. And that kind of got to a point where we weren't happy anymore about, this perspective. And so I think almost 2 years ago, Nico and I started investigating in this new thing called Inertia.js. Was it 2 years? I have lost any reference to time. I think that's a COVID thing. So a long time ago, Nico and I started investigating a new kind of way to build JavaScript-heavy applications called Inertia.js. And we really liked it. So the idea behind Inertia.js is that a lot more stuff that is happening in a single page application in the JavaScript world would be going back to the server and would be done on the server, and the JavaScript part of the front end would be a lot more about just rendering templates, rendering views, rendering buttons, etc. So just rendering stuff. Less logic, more rendering. And it felt really, really good. So we really liked the approach. It felt more like Kirby, the Kirby philosophy about things. But that was, it never really got to a point where we said, okay, this is going to be easy to switch. We never really figured out how to fully integrate it or how to move over to that new kind of architecture until 3.6. So we said, okay, let's try it again. And I don't know, suddenly it clicked and suddenly we saw, okay, this could be really, really, really cool. And not just for us. I mean, it's not about us in the end. It's all about our editors, our users, you basically, our clients. And making things faster, making things easier, making things more extensible. That's kind of the main purpose about all the changes that we built. And so we worked on this, and it grew and it grew, and it grew quite different from what inertia is. So at some point we decided, okay, yeah, inertia doesn't fit anymore. It's still the same methodology, but we bend it so much in our own ways that we need a new name for it, and that's kind of what Fiber is. So to give you a better idea, what we do in Fiber is, when we have something like the side view, for example, or a page view, there's all kind of data behind it, right? So we need a title, we need those buttons, and we need the pages that are rendered here, and we need the breadcrumb, and we need the search, and all of this kind of stuff that is kind of the data behind what you see here. And so what Fiber does is we prepare all of the data on the server, and we just put it into a big JSON object, and then we send it to the front end, and the front end is only responsible for rendering this stuff. And whenever you click on a link, you get to a new view, and that new view again loads a big JSON object that does all the things, fills all the kind of data that we have here. So it's a very simple connection between the backend, our PHP backend, and the Vue.js front end. It's way more what you are doing in Kirby templates. So you're building a template, you're using all the data from your content folders, you're putting that into HTML, the HTML is rendered, and that's it. The only difference would be the data is prepared as JSON, it's sent to Vue.js components create HTML, and that is being displayed. And so state management, most of the state management, most of the routing, or all the routing, and a lot of the logic that has been happening in JavaScript before is now happening on the server again. And it's becoming a lot more testable for us. It's faster for the users. And we could massively reduce the bundle size for our panel. So we managed to bring down the bundle size, the JavaScript bundle size for our panel for about 110 kilobytes, 111 I think, which is a lot of stuff. And it's not that our bundle was incredibly big. If you compare it to other applications, it was still quite small, but we just managed to shave off so much of it just by this step of moving over. But of course, behind the scenes, that step wasn't easy. So a lot of things need to happen first to make it work and also make it compatible with what we had. We didn't just want to throw this at you and make it a completely different world, and then you just have to start from scratch. That worked really well in many places. There are places where things are breaking, and we are aware of that. That's why we spend a lot of time with plugin developers in the last weeks to get things compatible that weren't compatible anymore. So that's kind of the biggest change in Kirby 3.6 is the architecture of the panel. But it's helping us, and it's helping you, I think, in the first place, to let this grow and get the roadblocks out of the way. For plugin developers especially, but also for the issues that are lying around in our GitHub repository for a while, there are so many doors that suddenly open and where we see a completely different set of options and possibilities. And I don't want to exaggerate, but it just feels magical in many ways. And now I'm talking for way too long about it as an introduction, what wasn't meant that way, but it's kind of important. So others would probably have called this Kirby 4.0. I mean, this was something that we were thinking about, but in the essence, it's still Kirby as it is. It's still very compatible with what we had before. The breaking changes are manageable. The plugins were easy to adapt in most places. So we wanted to build upon this and not completely throw everything out of the window and start over from scratch. We just wanted to make this shift in a manageable way for us. Okay, let me show you why this is exciting. So you see the panel right now is pretty much the same as it has been before. We get a lot of feedback that it's a lot snappier and we feel the same. So it's loading instantly in many places and it feels great. It just feels really stable and great. It has a lot less rendering and shifting, layout shifting problems than it had before. It feels solid, and with the unit tests behind it, it also feels a lot more controllable and stable. But what's exciting for us is the possibilities that come for plugin developers and for you in your projects. So let me show you a plugin that I built for this demo. We've got asked in the Discord from those who watched it and weren't too deep into the technical parts, like what is the benefit for our users, or what is the benefit for me as a freelancer or an agency? And our answer, or my answer would be, it's all about the simplicity to extend what you have. Kirby is all about that. It's about removing obstacles in a project. So you start a project, it starts simple. You might not see something that comes along later, but then your clients ask you for a new kind of feature, and you either have to solve it with a plugin in other systems, or you have to build it yourself. And this is something where we want to provide the best possible toolkit for you to say, okay, I can solve this, no problem. I don't need a plugin, I can build something. I can just stick a few things together and then it will work, and it will work exactly like the client asked for. Or I will, totally have this under control and I can do what I want to do. This is all about the kind of flexibility that we want to offer. And so in this case, what I built is a little demo application that is here to manage products. So in many places we see this, that a content management system is used for pages, but then suddenly a client comes along and says, we have this ERM system, or we have this CRM system, and we kind of want to manage our data there as well, or we want to integrate it somehow. We want to use the same kind of data sets. How can you bring this in there somehow? And well, there might be other systems that just offer plugins for MailChimp or offer plugins for SAP systems or whatever. But most of the times, the requirements are very, very custom and very adjusted to what the client needs. And the system might even be something custom built and not something that you can just throw a plugin upon. So in this case, this demo is intended to show you, okay, what can I do in such a case? So what I'm doing here is I'm building a new, what we call in Fiber area. So our panel is now separated into multiple areas. So the site would be an area, the user management would be an area, the account management would be an area. You can think of it like the menu items in the menu, or like applications within the panel. In this case, I'm building a new product area. You can see we give it this is the way that we build plugins in Kirby. The plugin developers among you know this. Forget about the top part, this is just a bit of demo code. So what we can do now is we can define a new product area. We can give it a label that will appear in the menu later. We can give it an icon, which also will appear in the menu later. And then we can say, should it appear in the menu or shouldn't it appear in the menu? And in this way, we switch it on. And now it should turn up in our menu. So we have a new products link here, and I can click on it. And this is what the demo does. It just pretends that there is a database somewhere, or in this case, a JSON file of products. And those products are loaded here in a table, simple table, to manage all those products. That could be newsletter subscribers. It could be anything else. You could just make up your own ideas here. And what I want to demo around this is a few simple things. So how can I build such a view? How can I build such a drop-down? And how can I build such a dialog? And how can I delete content? So all kinds of frameworky things, little components that you need to build your own little applications within Kirby. So this is kind of the idea behind it. And so areas define their dialogues, they define their drop-downs, they can define searches. So for example, if I go in here and I click on products, I have a new search type and I can search for brown eggs, and then I get brown eggs and I can click on that and I get to brown eggs. So basic functionalities in Kirby that I can extend and build upon. And I want to show you just a bit of code. It gets very technical here in many places, but you can also see how simple it is to achieve this kind of stuff when you are building plugins. So all of this can be defined. It doesn't have to define. So to be defined, you don't have to build a custom search. You don't have to build custom dropdowns and dialogues. You can just start building views in this case. And Sonja has written a great cookbook article to get you started with views. So if you want to know more about that, read about that in the cookbook. It's the last article that has been published. So let's just give you an idea between how the panel and the back end of the panel communicates with the view application. So we have this views file here, and this is how a view looks now on the back end. So we define a pattern. This is how routing works in Kirby. So if you have defined custom routes before, you are familiar with this syntax. So you define a routing pattern. This would basically be the location where you can find that new view. So it's at panel/products. So you could say, okay, something to extend your pattern. And then there's an action callback. And that action callback is rendering the JSON object for your view. And your JSON object is only needs two things. It needs a component. So you have to define what kind of Vue.js component is being loaded on the front end, and it sends over all the properties to that component. So this is basically it. You don't have to do anything else. So you say, okay, use this component to render my view, and then give all those props, which is basically data, to that view, and then the view can do whatever it wants with those props. So in this case, I'm sending over an array of products. And the nice part about this is something that hasn't been possible before. Since this is now only just the PHP action, I can do all kinds of things that I would normally do in templates, and I can debug this super easily. I can just dump whatever is in my data array and then see, okay, yeah, this is going to be sent to my front end. There are no magic API calls or anything else weird that would go on and you don't really understand where it's coming from. It's just one stream of data that's very understandable. So you send products there as an array. And then on the other hand, there is a view component, which looks like this. So it uses some of the components that we define in our UI kit, and then some basic HTML like a table and a bit of styling down here for the table. Nothing of this is really special. It's really just about rendering. So we get the products here from our backend and we create a table. We create a row for every product. We print the product title, the type, the description, the product price, and an options dropdown. And all of this is then in the end showing up as a table. So that's how easy it is to create a view now. You have the data on the back end and you have the view on the front end, and that's it. So that would be step one. So now what I want to show you is how easy it is to create a dropdown. So I said, okay, this is a dropdown icon here. It's called the options dropdown. It's taking care of putting this little nice icon there, and it's pulling options from a URL. And that's the next big part in Fiverr. We can simply create entire dropdowns, entire dialogues by sending data to the front end in the same way as we did just now for the view. So if we wanted to create a dropdown for a certain product, we are using a URL to that. And then in our view, we are defining those dropdowns. Well, it's just one dropdown in this case. It's just the product dropdown. And if you have a look at that, it looks like this. Same format. So we have the pattern. It's defining the URL for the dropdown. It's what you've just seen in the back end, in the front end, I'm sorry. So this is kind of building that URL. It's products plus the product ID. And our route is using the same thing. So it's the product plus the product ID the ID is passed to the action, and then we send an array of options. So this entire thing here is building the dropdown. So as soon as I click on that link, that dropdown is loaded, the options are loaded from the PHP backend and displayed here. And this is really great because now we suddenly can have all kinds of logic built into PHP, which we all understand because we build templates all the time. And we only send back an array to the front end and handle all kinds of crazy things in the front end now. So it gets a lot easier. And then as a result, we could say, okay, such a drop-down option has a link. So we click on that link and we land on a website or on a panel view or anything else. So we can route around with it. Or we can say, let's open a dialog here. And a dialog is another URL. So you just define a URL to an edit dialog and to a delete dialog in combination with the ID. So whenever we click on that, that dialog is being loaded again from the backend. If we have a look at that, we have our delete dialog here, and we also have our edit dialog here. So if I open that delete dialog, same thing again. We have a pattern for the same URL that we just used. So that defines the dialog at that point. And in this case, it has two actions. It has a load action, which defines how the dialog looks. So you can create all kinds of dialogs. You can create a form dialog. You can create a text dialog, a remove dialog for certain kind of things. So in this case, this should be familiar from what I showed you before from the view. We define the component that is being used for the dialog, in this case, remove dialog, and then we send data over again. So we send the text that the dialog should show when it opens. And then the second action would be the submit action. As soon as that dialog gets submitted with the submit button, this is executed. And this is just some demo code, some pseudo code to delete the product in this case. But this simple piece of PHP now creates this dialog because it's connected as I just showed you. And when I click on delete, the item is deleted and it's automatically reloading. It's automatically refetching all the data for this view, and it's recreating the table, and the item is gone and everything's just fine. So it's very close to a very traditional way of building applications where you just root somewhere, you send a post request, you send a get request, and then something gets rendered or updated or whatever. And also, I mean, the most essential part of this is by doing all of this on the back end, it's not just about the simplicity of not needing that much Vue.js knowledge. It's also about not polluting the client with much more JavaScript. So all of the dialogues that we had before were defined in JavaScript in 3.5 and previous versions, and they are all now defined on the server. So they are requested on demand. They don't take up, they don't increase the bundle size. Those views don't increase the bundle size. Everything you do here now is a lot more efficient and a lot smaller. And we also saw this in plugins. So the plugins got instantly smaller and more efficient as well. And this is what it's all about. We don't want to build on something that would create more and more baggage along the way. And with every feature, we would add more JavaScript to it. So this is all about plugins. You can build awesome stuff with this. You can build entire applications on this and use our permission system and use our component system and use everything that you see in the panel in the same way that we do. You can build your own custom searches, as I just showed you. All of this is now possible. But for many people, it's also interesting what you can do with the existing core of Kirby. So we often get this question, I want to change the way a page dialog opens, or the create dialog for a page should be showing different fields, for example, or should be different based on a user role or on permissions or something. And this has been extremely difficult before. It was possible to replace those components, but they were tied to different API calls, and it was kind of hard to do that. And with this new setup, it's a lot easier because we use the same kind of technology. We have the same kind of fiber calls in the background. Everything is based on PHP, and you can just extend what we have in our PHP backend to replace certain features. One thing you probably all instantly see as useful would be that you can now override our custom or our create dialog. So this is what I did here for this example. I've loaded a different kind of dialog in case of the cardlets here for our team. And now I can fill in a new team member and create a coffee machine. So I now can have custom fields for the team when a new team member is getting added. The slug is gone, it's instantly added, and I don't land on that page. I can decide where a redirect goes to. I can decide all of that, and I can decide it for different kinds of applications. So for example, in this case, still the old dialog would be loaded. The template selection is still there. Everything is still there. So I can bind this to a certain kind of conditions if a certain permission is applying, or if a certain template is being used or whatever. So I can be very, very dynamic here. And to show you, this is the last thing I want to show you for today before we finally wrap this up. So this is where I created a second plugin to replace some of our core code. In this case, again, I'm overriding our site area, but only parts of that. I don't have to override everything. I just override the dialogues that I want to change, and I override the drop-downs that I want to change. I could override the page search there, or the file search with, for example, a custom search server, or a custom Algolia integration, or anything like that. So what I did for this demo is I replaced the page create dialog. And to show you how I did this is I modified the load option here. And whenever there's the parent is the cardlets page, then I send a completely different set of fields here. And the same I do for the submit logic. So whenever the same page is opened here, I have a different kind of submit logic here. So I can override tiny little pieces of my core to replace the functionality that is normally given by the panel. And I did the same for the drop-downs. So in the same case here, I check for the template in this case, and if the template is a certain template, in this case the agency employee, I send different options to the page drop-down. So when I open the page drop-down, I no longer have the regular pages drop-down. If you know the pages drop-down that normally exists, it would look something like this. So you have all those kind of options to open it, to rename something, to change the URL, whatever. And I don't need this for this example here. This is just my team manager. So I made up some basic options to download a vCard, to invite to a meeting. I could hire or fire or whatever, build all kinds of options in here that are fitting for this kind of content. And the great thing is this is not just working in one place. I don't have to do anything to make it work everywhere. It automatically works everywhere. So wherever the options drop down for this particular page type is loaded, it will always pull in those options from my custom plugin. And I can easily fall back to the core code if I don't want this for other page types. So I don't have to do this for every page. I can just be very selective with it. Whew. So this was a lot of talking. I hope I got across what the possibilities are and the outlook of this is. We see so many potential in it. We hope that you understand it as well from a plugin perspective, from your own perspective. We hope you see it from a point there that you can make your user experience for your clients easier, more customized. See it more as a framework for your own ideas. Yeah, and if you have questions around it, now I'm really, really eager to hear them and interested to see what you think about it. Thank you very much for listening. That was a lot of talking. I don't know, I always get carried away.
But that just shows your passion for it, I think, right? So how deep you're into it and how long you can talk about stuff like this. I said it many times before in other live streams that we had together and also on stage when we had the chance to. I always remember when we were sitting there, like either in my kitchen or in like any hotel bar or whatever, and talking about our things in terms of like your Kirby relation or my Beyond Tellerrand stuff, and it always ends up like long conversations about many things, and also like about new features, if you should implement them or not, and how long the decision takes. Because sometimes it's not just about the feature, but about the principles behind everything that you do with the Kirby team, right? So
yeah, and also about the consequences. I mean, this has been shown in this case more drastically than ever before, like how many things follow from one decision. So you either get blocked by a decision at some point, and then everything else becomes so much harder, or you suddenly make a decision like this change in architecture, and you feel like, okay, so many doors open, and all of those things become possible that haven't been possible before. And yeah, it's super interesting, but also kind of risky sometimes, because you can't really watch into the...
Completely understand this. Is it sometimes that you as you say, like see new opportunities opening up, but then you go like, well, we can't throw this at the audience, at my clients at once, the customers, right? So you will introduce them step by step, or like a new structure step by step, so to slowly make them getting used to it sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. So normally we try to make those steps really incremental. That's kind of coming from our history. So the step from Kirby 2 to Kirby 3 was really massive. And that was because we didn't make enough incremental steps during the development of Kirby 2.
Yes.
So at one point it just got really bloated, and we didn't make those quality changes. So we just kept on adding features. And at some point we got so stuck that we had to redo pretty much everything. And so with version 3, we said, okay, we want to have those incremental steps, but those incremental steps are sometimes very hard, because they always they have so many dependency issues. So you make a decision, you want to make a small change, but then it turns out, okay, that small change is triggering a lot of different other problems that you haven't seen before. And with the fiber step, we made it's still an incremental change, but it's a bigger change than what we did before, because we felt like we don't want to get stuck anymore. We don't want to have the same problem that we had with version 2. We want to have that clean code base that we can build upon again, and have more simple, smaller steps that are reliable.
Yeah, cool. One last question before we get to the actual questions. From mine, how often did you regret an update or like some feature that you implemented because of it just caused problems, or was going a different direction than you thought, and you made more complications than it actually enhanced your Kirby version?
Yeah.
If there was any like kind of.
So we just discussed this the other day, that there are those roadblocks that I talked about, and I wouldn't say we regret them. It's just sometimes you can't see what follows after implementing something, and it's not that. I mean, we can't really regret it, because we always try to make a very controlled decision, and do the best we can to do all this research around it, and be very careful about it. But then at some point you still find out that it didn't turn out in a way that we expected, and then regret would be the wrong term, I think. It doesn't happen that often. We have a couple of places where we say, okay, that could be nicer. Yeah, it could be more user friendly. It could be cleaner. It could be more stable. I think in a big system, it always happens. So the system is, it's growing over time, and there will always be parts that are not ideal. And so it's all about keep moving, keep improving, keep cleaning it up, and not thinking about it too long.
Yeah, nice, really nice. So I'll jump into the question section, and let me have a look. So these are from our last event. So here you go. So the first one already is like one Well, I think it's an interesting one, also yet a difficult one. Frederick was asking, do you have plans to make Kirby more beginner friendly? Well, before you answer this, because there are a few answers in the chat already. There's a lot of sources where you explain a lot of basic stuff as well. But from my understanding, without really going into the answers to this question in the chat, I think sometimes people might mix up beginner friendly with like plug and play. You know what I mean? So, because I think Kirby is like a really simple CMS where it's like simple to get started, but it's also very basic and clean in the beginning. So I think like it's not like a WordPress thing where you throw a theme on there and all of a sudden you have a theme and then 3 or 4 plugins and all of a sudden it works like you wanted it to. Well, most of the times you find out with a WordPress installation, which I haven't used for many years anymore, that this is also not working as you expected. You know, but like at least you have like a theme. With the theme, oftentimes it comes like some JavaScript libraries that help you enhance the website and all this kind of stuff. But from my understanding, that wouldn't be beginner friendly. So if that is meant, I think it's absolutely not what Kirby tries to be. Or you teach me wrong.
Yeah, no, it's. I think you totally hit the nail on the head here. So we have a very different way of approaching projects. Our philosophy is all about starting from scratch and adding what you need. And this idea that you throw a theme onto it, that it doesn't really fit well into our environment. There are really good themes for Kirby, and they make a wonderful job for those people who want to build something based on a theme. But we, as a system, we never really plan around themes in a way that we say, okay, the themes have to be switchable easily. You just try one thing, and then you try the next thing, and then you try the third thing. This is not how we think about building websites. So you make a decision for a theme, and then that theme could be really good for you, and it could really help you as a starting ground, or maybe even as a complete solution. But just going into the panel and switching different kinds of themes is not what we are after. And I think it's also not what the good theme developers are after. You build something of a good quality and then you go for that. Or you start your own thing and you start from scratch, and you have a lot easier time when you don't have the baggage around from a theme that normally could add a JavaScript library or whatever out of the box. So, but I get that. There is a balance between keeping something simple and keeping it plug and play. You can only do one thing. Sometimes you can only do one thing. It can be simple from a perspective of someone who gets started and with their own stuff, or you can make it simple from a perspective of someone who just wants to click buttons and try things and install plugins or whatever. And we try to make it to get that balance better in some places. So it could be easier in some places. I totally admit that, but not everywhere. I think we will never reach that point where we just have a template switcher, a theme switcher.
I guess also you would have to make too many decisions where you would lose the flexibility of Kirby.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
So because you have to restrict a lot of things then. And therefore, I don't know. I don't know if Frederick meant this with like the beginner-friendly part, but I guess in the actual answers there were a lot of points where maybe Frederick finds some help.
Yeah, that's good.
And also, I can only highly recommend joining the Discourse chat as well to get help in the forum, because there's a lot of help for beginners for Kirby, to be honest. Yeah, there's like a specific question from Volker Otto, and he's asking, there was a lot of discussion on the feature request, optional native database storage.
Yeah.
Volker would like to know if your your opinion on this. Will this ever be considered as a core feature of Kirby someday, or is virtual pages the way to go? Because deep inside it's against the flat file idea.
I think I already replied to this, but I think it's an interesting question that many people have, and I see it on the feedback page that a lot of upvotes are behind this feature request. From our perspective, we often land there on this question, should we make it easier to integrate databases or even build entire architecture upon a database? And that is coming from different perspectives. So there are really big projects that would need this as a basic foundation. For example, if you want to use more like a cloud platform, then the file system is often not an ideal solution as a data foundation or a data source. And some people just bring their content in a database form and they just want to plug it in there somehow. I replied that I don't think that we will ever get to a point where Kirby is fully run on a database. That would just be such a drastic change in everything. And I also feel like we would lose our core competence there. But I totally see that we could make the integration of a database layer better. So what I feel like, still feel like, is the file system is ideal for 90% of all website structures. I still have to see a site that is completely out of reach for for a file-based system. But what I also see is there are often solutions that could be plugged in. So, for example, the 90% of the site is built on the file-based system, but then there is a big product catalog. Oh God, I'm losing my words here. Product catalog with thousands of products, and that is coming from a database. And I think what should be easier in Kirby is to bring that in and say, okay, yeah, the product database is there, and we can easily administrate it in the panel, and we can integrate it with the rest of the site. But the rest of the site is still built on files, and we get best of both worlds, like a hybrid between those solutions.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, for whatever I do these days with websites, like Kirby is like absolutely the perfect fit because it's like small websites, you know, like it's not many products. I mean, even though the Beyond Tellerrand page now grows constantly, but slowly.
Oh, that's quite big already. I mean, behind the scenes, it's
true,
quite big. Yeah,
true. Browsing. Who's this? This must be a made-up name. Browsing for an internal URL or link from the writer field. Are there any thoughts thereof?
Yeah. Also, something that has been requested a lot. We are working on it. We have ideas around it. It's one of those features that has been blocked, is now becoming easier again with our dialogues. I think we are on it. I can't make any promises, but it's something we really want to have. I mean, there are many features where we say, yes, this has to happen. It's then sometimes just a problem of resources and priorities and putting it into a roadmap next to all the issues and all kinds of other stuff that we have to solve.
Okay. Then Gunnar, hello Gunnar, you're here as well. Can you define different icon colors for light mode and dark mode, he's asking.
Okay, this has been answered by Nico. He came up with a perfect solution based on custom CSS properties. That's the way to go, I think. So you can, in those image options that I showed you, you can use custom CSS properties, and they can come from a panel CSS, and then you can define anything in there and make a custom property for dark mode and a custom property, and then override it into light mode or the other way around, and then switch it basically on that. So that's pretty easy to do in this case. Yeah.
Cool. Another question is more user-based. Copy pasting Markdown into the writer field. Is that something on the horizon?
Yeah, I saw the replies there. Again, the team already replied. They all love it. I also love it. He has already been sent to the feedback platform. I would love to have it. I don't really have an idea yet how to build it technically, but to decide between if something is Markdown or if something is plain text or HTML. That would be a bit tricky to solve. Like, how do we figure out what is what? But yeah, it would be awesome. I mean, the idea that you copy something from IA Writer, for example, and you put it in there and then the blocks get created, that would be, killer. Absolutely.
Nice. Yeah, IA Writer is the tool that I use most to write anything.
I mean, there are so many great Markdown editors out there. And this is also an interesting thing that we often see users, so those camps between Markdown editors or people who write Markdown, people who write want to have a what you see is what you get editor, people who use the blocks fields. There's there's also this balance between different user groups. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I myself am using a mix of Markdown and the Kirby tags. You know, because the image tag is different, easier to write for me than the Markdown image tag.
This is where we came from. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Lewis is asking, any control over compression and quality in Webp?
I think this has also been answered.
But maybe we want to answer that for those who haven't read the answer.
So yeah, the quality setting can be applied. I read that it's not working for Webp. I'm not entirely sure of that. So if it's working, so if it's supported by the format, then it's also supported. So what we do is we send that to the GD library, or we send it to ImageMagick, and then it should be used there. If it's supported, it's been used. If it's not supported, it's not been used. So I'm not too deep into the formats. So I know that AVIF has a quality setting. If Webp has one, I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, the next one is a funny one, I think. Roman is asking, will there also be such an event for geeks where, for example, the block model is explained? You mean like more in-depth?
Oh my God.
Questions?
Yeah, that's kind of funny because we often hear. So whenever we run such an event, I mean, this is kind of our own fault, right? We don't have like a very specific target group that is just developers or just designers or something in between. It's like it's all over the place. So whenever we run something like this, whenever I record a video or whenever I post something, I either get like, yeah, this is
too basic.
It's too basic.
No,
or
it's too complicated.
It's too technical. And the same with the workshops. I mean, whenever I run a workshop, there's like 50% sitting in there who already built like 20 websites with Kirby. And then there's like 50% they never built anything with Kirby and also never touched HTML before. And then
you can also forget to ask if someone already is an expert in Kirby, for example, like upfront.
Yeah,
because you then get people going like, yeah, well, I'm expert, and then they don't know the easiest stuff, or vice versa.
Yeah. What I like about it is, I would love to go more into details many times. I just wonder what the
audience.
Yeah, what would be the best occasion for it? So where could we do it? Should we have a highly geeky live stream at some point? I'm not sure. So what we try to do is we try to improve our inline documentation a lot. And we did that with 3.6 massively. So you will find a lot more code comments, inline documentation. And if you have questions around this stuff, please join the, I think you are already in Discord. Please ask us there. I mean, I cannot promise that we always find the time to immediately reply to such things. Sometimes we also have to look up the basics behind it again to explain it better. But I love to talk about such stuff. So yeah, if I find the time, please go and ask, and I'll try my best.
Maybe I think maybe YouTube would also be, because you started like the basic stuff with YouTube, which is really great.
Yeah.
But maybe this is also something where if you get many requests for a certain thing, you can go like do a 10-minute video.
I have a massive to-do list for YouTube videos, and I give a short explanation. So the pandemic came, and then homeschooling came, and
Same problem here. Yeah.
The family was around all the time, so the kids were there.
Exactly.
And then the afternoons when I normally would record the videos were totally blocked, and then things are just not as regular anymore as they were before. So
same for me. I tried to bring back my German podcast. Same situation there.
Yeah.
Like, recording wasn't possible really.
Yeah, it's a shame because I really liked recording those. So
yeah, we'll get back to it.
I will get back to it definitely.
For sure. Adam has a question, and Adam is asking: are the dropdowns and views and dialogues in the same namespace? So the example URL for the dropdown is products/any. Can there also be an area with products/ You have to read it because I can read it right now. Or is it already taken by the dropdown?
They don't. They are not in the same namespace, so they are separated. There's automatic a prefix is automatically prepended. That puts them in a different namespace. But the pattern is always without the prefix. You don't have to care about that.
Sebastian Krieger is here. Hello, Sebastian.
Yeah.
I'm just working on trying to get the conventions plugin working for me. So and you got sorry, just some side thing. Sebastian, you got some very lovely feedback from Tantec the other day when I showed him your documentation actually, because he said like, "Oh, that's a complete documentation," and it is, and it's you have to read a lot. So
Sebastian is doing great stuff.
yes. So Sebastian is asking, can the fiber architecture already be used to create custom sections to embed in a page blueprint rather than an area? Is
I
that
have to
possible?
understand that quickly. Well, sections still work as they did before. So we plan a few more things around sections. They are not intended to be as breaking as, or they are not intended to be breaking at all. We will also refactor them in a similar way that you see now with the rest of Fiber, but it's not done. So the sections are still working as they did before, because they already had quite a good connection between the backend and the front end. Not ideal. This is always it's also a part of the code where we think it could be better. But this is an ongoing process. It didn't happen so far, but it will at some point.
Okay. Then we have a question from Bart. He's asking,
That's a nice idea. Yeah.
can you put the demo online somewhere for us to look around?
Yeah. If that's, 5 stars. I'm happy with 5 stars. That's enough. Yeah. Yeah. I just have to keep it in mind. Yeah.
And Roman is asking, I guess he was referring to a certain passage in your demo. Is area also working for blocks? And is there an example?
Not entirely sure if I get that. So you have to think of an area like an application within the panel. So users management, as I said before, the account view, the account management. So it's just a namespace or a space for certain kind of features that are related to a certain kind of area. So you could have the to-dos area, for example, where you have a little to-do app in your panel, or you could have a MailChimp area where you have MailChimp newsletter administration features in your panel, etc., etc. So blocks and areas are not really related in some way. So there's an area, and within that area, there could be a blocks field at some point, but there can't be areas within blocks. That doesn't really fit together. Those are completely different things.
Okay.
I hope I understood it right. Please correct me if I got it wrong.
Okay, then Lars Kosman has a question. Is there a plugin ready-to-go solution for a front-end search where the user is able to filter the results?
Not a plugin or ready-to-go solution. There is a solution for to search pages. So we have our pages collection method has pages collection has a search method which you can use to build your own search. So a simple search for a simple website can easily be done with that. If you need a really good search experience for your site, you can have a look at the source code for our Kirby site, because we use a service called Algolia there, and it's quite a big service. So yeah, you can. It's providing a search server for you where you can do instant searches, and it gives you autocomplete results instantly, and you can do all kinds of crazy things around search there. So if you need inspiration around that, then you should check that out and check out how we integrated that.
Okay. Another search-related question, I think. Adam has got a question. If you have a custom area with custom search group, I know you can already limit users to the area, but can you already also limit available search groups, and obviously which group is it by default, by a role or by a different condition?
Okay, Nico answered. So yeah, okay, yeah. So what happens with our areas is we have access permission based on the area. So you can, for every area that we define in the core and that you define in your plugins, you also get an access permission keyword. So for example, if you create a new to-dos area, you can then say access for to-dos will be disabled. So a user cannot access the to-dos application, for example, or my products plugin that I just showed. And you can do the same for the search. So the search shouldn't be available in that case. I hope that works out of the box. I think it should. And if that doesn't work, you can still run logic in front of the search. So you could say, okay, the search type is only defined if a certain user is logged in, if a certain user role is logged in. And otherwise the custom search is not defined. That's also possible. You can bind it to all kinds of conditions. Well, it already gets quite technical. I hope that the rest of the group will follow.
Yeah, we just have like 2 more questions actually.
Good.
One is
This one is for you.
the next one. Yeah. No, I don't know who Peter Thiel is.
I think it's one of the Silicon Valley investor gurus.
No, but I mean, I don't know anybody from my father's side of my family. So therefore,
no connection there.
No connection there. But another question is it a reasonably viable option to connect Kirby, I think, to a customer product base, I think, is the question? Because I think there's words.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
But so they are discussing the kind of connection afterwards.
Okay, yeah.
The paying one. Okay, I'm trying to understand the discussion. Maybe it's hard to follow it at... Well, it depends on the project. It depends on how much time you want to invest. The example that I showed, I hope I got the question right. The example that I showed, to create that table, to create the drop-downs, to create the dialogues, to add, to edit a product and to delete a product, that has been done within, I think, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. I mean, okay, I know this shit pretty well. I'm probably decently fast with it, but I still think if you want to do something like this, it's really not difficult. It's really not something where you say, oh my God, this is complete magic. So this is what we want to achieve with this kind of setup. We want to give you a setup where you say, okay, this is really not that hard. I can build a part of the application myself, and I can customize it in a way that works. And we want to do this in a way that you say, maybe I need half a day for it. So it's still in a reach, in a kind of budget reach that clients could afford it and that you could offer it. That's kind of what it's all about. If it's something where you say, oh my God, I need 2 weeks, it's clear that you probably won't offer it. Because, yeah, why would a smaller client say, I pay a couple €1,000 for such a simple table or something? So we want to make it really easy, that it becomes affordable for your clients and it becomes viable for you as a project, and it doesn't become a burden at some point. We want to make it easier than integrating a plugin and finding out that the plugin sucks and that you are stuck with the plugin because it doesn't do one feature. That's kind of what we want to do with this.
Yeah. Nice. So, Hash and Salt, Jim is asking, maybe put more videos, or it's more like a suggestion, on YouTube, like I just said, and mark them as beginner, intermediate, or advanced. But that is exactly the problem that we just described.
It's planned.
Finding beginner, intermediate, or advanced, and sorting yourself into these kind of categories. Maybe
it also feels a bit like running, right? We've been talking about that before. It's like the pandemic felt a bit like when you are really into running, you do it regularly every second day or whatever, and then you get sick. And then you have a break for, I don't know, a month or something until you are fully recovered. And then it's super, super hard to get back into the regular mode again. And this is kind of where I'm stuck right now. I really want to do it. I really love it. I enjoyed recording those videos much more than I ever anticipated. But it feels hard right now to get back into it.
Yeah, but also like I find it difficult, as I said before, like to categorize them into beginner, intermediate, or advanced. Because you know, maybe just like put in the topics and then let the users decide if it's too difficult for them, right? I think keywords and maybe naming them correctly is the key to the success. And
I also have to say, I mean, the beginner ones are easier, to be super honest about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The more advanced it gets, the more preparation you have to do, and the more you could make a mistake and show something that is not totally accurate or something like that.
Yeah, Daniel Moll is suggesting I stay at your house for the next 14 days. Setup is done for recording, so we do one each day. Well,
there
if you
are
look at the mess
families.
that I caused here,
Yeah. We no longer have a living room. Although people on Discord said that I probably live in a castle right now, it's
Yeah.
far from the truth. The living room does no longer exist right now.
also I've got a family and 3 kids, so maybe they want their dad at home as well. Plus, I even haven't written these thank you emails to the partners and speakers of the last Beyond Tellerrand conference.
Yeah.
So lots of things to do, wrap up for such an event, and no, doesn't work. Sorry, but maybe next time.
Nice suggestion.
Next time, I mean, the setup at home is easy as well. So if there is feature requests or like smaller things like we did with the Kirby in the Wild.
Yeah. Oh, that was nice. We should
we did.
repeat that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Happy to do this. Then there's another question. Love the cookbook article on panel areas.
Great
Could
job
there be-
by Sonja. Yeah.
Could there be a panel area starter kit to help us
Oh yeah, that's a good
getting
idea.
started working on an example like areas, dialogues, and dropdowns in
Oh,
your
yes.
project quickly?
That's a really good idea. I think we really have to overhaul our product, our plugin kits. That's something that I got as feedback as well the other day. That I think we have a Johan. We talked about Johan before. He created a fantastic starter kit for those Vue.js plugins called Kirby Up, and we now took that as the default for our
Just checking your battery.
Also,
Oh, good.
and we now use that as default for whenever we build Kirby plugins. And so we have to rebundle everything that we did around plugins because there are now so much better solutions, and we really want to provide easier ways to get started. Yeah. Was the cat online? Missed that
No.
bit of a stream.
The cat is too shy to join me and Bastian.
Yeah, that's
So if
true.
Bastian would be here on his own, maybe.
Yeah, likely.
Also,
But
you're both looking very good today. Thank you, you liar. But thank you. Oh, thanks for the clear answer
Oh yeah, that's cool.
you've given.
I'm happy about that.
And the last question for now would be from Christian. And
Ah,
he's asking, are you planning to develop an e-commerce plugin like
Craft.
Craft CMS did?
There is one, not from us, but I forgot the name. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I hope you don't watch it right now. Merck's. It's called Merck's plugin, and I think it's really good. So there are a couple e-commerce solutions already. I mean, it would be awesome to find the time to build a full-blown core out-of-the-box setup thing for shops. But to be honest,
Quite difficult, right? I mean, quite complex in a way. Like,
complex, and also I'm quite happy not to have to do it because from a German developer position, there are so many legal requirements that I hardly don't want. I don't know if I ever want to get into it, to be honest, because then the reliability is also a bit on our end, and I find shops tricky.
yeah. Also, like all the payment gateways you have to consider.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare. I mean, I remember when you built the Stripe payment into the Beyond Tellerrand website.
Oh my god, yeah, and also testing and stuff. It's not fun. So it's
Exactly. And it's not, to be honest, it's also not the core of what Kirby stands for, right?
Yeah.
So I guess like if there would be a developer who is like totally into e-commerce
Yeah.
and would completely focus on that, and he would be the so-called expert for that field.
Yeah, I think we would need a split team. So there would need to be a second unit to take care of
Yeah,
the
it's a very
e-commerce
complex
and-
topic,
yeah,
especially in Germany, as you said. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just got an email from my accountant. We were talking about like the charity donation stuff I took on site. This email already blew my mind. I had to like.
It's not the best country for
No.
simple
No.
bureaucratic things.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jim is asking, or no, suggesting more, I think, if I do it. Going back to the difficulty grading problem, maybe pick 3 site builds that you would consider easy, intermediate, and advanced, and do videos on building those out. Yeah?
Yeah,
Then
that's
people get to see the new stuff in context.
That's a good idea. There have been a couple requests. That's a beginner question again, but there have been a couple requests to make a video about how to get from plain or static HTML to a Kirby site. And I think that would be a super interesting one. And I can totally see like there could be entire full circle projects where we start from beginning and taking it to the full website in the end and do that on different levels. I could think that could work.
I mean, you would never ever match like everybody's needs, right? So
Well, no.
So it's,
Yeah, I feel more like with the videos that I have in mind, there are more topics that we cover in the docs already, but that could still be great for videos because then I could extend more on what we already tell in the docs, or well, not extend more, but I could cover it more in a different way, in a different perspective in a video. For example, page models would be something that I would really love to cover, or more panel settings. I mean, there are so many panel settings, field settings, things that you can get out of fields. And I feel like it's sometimes easier to see a video and hear about how it's done in a video than reading through the documentation. Although we try our best to make the documentation easy to digest, for some people it just works better to watch the video. So I think there's still a lot of topics that could be covered there.
oh, no question popped up.
wow.
Philip is asking regarding e-commerce and payments. You are using Paddle, right? Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you recommend a digital-only product, especially in combination with Kirby, of course?
Oh yes, yeah, it's great. I mean, I don't get paid for that, but it's really great.
Paddle, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it has its quirks. It's not perfect, but nothing is perfect. Kirby's also not perfect, but for what we are using, I think it's great, and the support is great. It's making our life so much easier, as we said before, with bureaucracy in Germany, with VAT handling. It would be such a mess without it. Yeah, I can highly recommend it. Yeah, especially for, I mean, they are built for digital-only products. That's their target audience. So yeah, 100%.
Perfect. I think these are all questions, and my mouth is dry, and yours must be
Even drier.
I guess. Well,
It was great.
for me, it was like really, really fun. I mean, 4 hours. No, not really. I was quick. 3 hours, 10 minutes in the car to come here. Tomorrow morning I go back, but for me it was great fun to do this, to try this as well.
Likewise.
Like the setup.
I think it looks really nice. I was totally happy with the look of it. I mean, so far I was only sitting there with the iPhone camera because it was better than the MacBook Air camera, and still the iPhone camera sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's room for improvements, and certainly it's a different feeling to, especially for you, giving the demo part. Because when I like fiddle around here and do stuff, you might get distracted, right?
No, I liked it. It was
okay, cool.
It was great.
Yeah, sorry for the hiccup with the audio stuff. Usually Toby's
that's a shame.
I have no idea why exactly that happened, and if it's like on Toby's side or maybe on my Ecamm live side, which usually doesn't cause any problems, to be honest. But we look into it, and I do some tests with Toby to get him live back into the show. Also, if we are out and not in my studio. Yeah, before we say goodbye, I'd like to say thank you to the people from Vito who also constantly improve their product.
Yeah.
Well, some people were asking about the chat, and they try to make things more easy, and sometimes it's just that we are not used to the new stuff. Yes, I think the chat, also the main chat, should be something to be added next to the video again, but I guess that's something I would discuss with them in the Slack channel, because they are always like happy for good feedback. I will pass the feedback on. Yeah, but I'm very thankful that they built this kind of platform, because I think it's a good way to have like a more, how do I say, like a more cozy kind of feeling that you are inside somewhere, instead of like just putting it to YouTube where you are one of many streaming. Maybe it's a bit misleading, as Bastian said, that the hub is something to be reused, so you don't have to reapply if we do a Kirby show because you're already registered.
Yeah, for the next time. So you are already in there now.
Keep the login, and we'll just do a hub announcement. And no Adam, no cat.
It's not even here. So
No.
yeah, I can't even drag it in front of the camera. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for watching. We see it on Discord all the time. This community is special in so many ways. I mean, have such a friendly and supportive and patient and compassionate crowd, and it means the world to us, and it's really, really, really special. And then seeing you here again, all the familiar faces, on all the new faces, it's so cool. It's it's moving us all every day, motivating us every day. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I just agree. I mean, I'm not part of the Kirby team, but I'm using Kirby for many years now. And I'm following the development of Kirby a lot, and how the whole team was found, and how this all like evolved into what it is nowadays. Bastian owning a castle and all this kind of stuff.
You have to go on Discord to understand the inside joke.
Sorry. No, but honestly, it's so great to share these kind of things. And I think for me, at least, I don't know if it's the same for you, Bastian, for me, it's great to have those conversations with someone who's not, I mean, you don't run an event, but I said it so many times, the problems we have got, the kind of feature requests we have got, like in different directions, but the way they are asked, and it's like so many similarities, and it's great to share things with like someone like-minded. And it's always a great pleasure to do these shows, even though I'm not like completely deep into programming, but that's maybe not the worst thing to have. Like,
no, absolutely,
question, right?
it's perfect. For me, it's perfect, or for us as a team, it's always perfect when we get like a more outside perspective.
Yeah.
And yeah, totally.
Wonderful. Yeah, with this, I'd say I will turn on a bit more of Toby's music. We stay in the chat for a couple of more minutes.
Yeah.
And
have another drink.
Switch off the video and say goodbye to you.
Thank
See you
very
next
much.
time.
See you.
Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.